but it depends on what income it is, because that has to be done all the time. Every day you have to pay. But development is something different. It is like a chemical process. It is like puberty. You change, completely you change. It cannot be easily reversed. In fact, most of the time it cannot be reversed at all. Build a 30-story building in Chicago, and it's remained there for 100 years, whatever. But how do you get this development? By providing wealth, status. These are the things that make the person, that makes a permanent change, that makes development. So you have to provide wealth to the poor. That is the question that, frankly speaking, many economists don't think of it. They talk only about income. We talk of India is growing at the rate of 8% a year. Excellent. And at that rate, in another 10 years, per capita income will be twice. Will we have, on that basis, twice as much happiness, twice as much comfort? I don't think so. Because we have grown at 8% a year for the past 10 years. In India now, 10% better off than it was, twice as better off as it was 10 years ago. Can you, for example, travel to a place of work in half the time? You can't make it, not twice the time. So you see, there's a difference between money and what money can buy. So this is something that we tend to forget. So that's a question. And so somebody says nods the head.
But,
okay.
sir, I'm sorry to interrupt again. Okay. I think it is more has to do with the mindset. When I was going to college in this country, I was living on $1,000 a year. But never occurred to me I was poor. Never occurred to me. Well, when I finish my college, I'm going to start these big, projects, do big things. Never occurred to me I'm poor.
Okay, I tell you, when it comes to Mr. Mikaba in Oliver Twist, he says your income is 19 and 6, expenditure is 20, then result is misery, that's poverty. But your income is 20, your expenditure is 19 and 6, your result is happiness, you are a prosperous person. So it depends on how much you want, that also is true. But I would say, for example, in Mumbai, anybody who wants to find a job, provided it depends to be anything, whatever job is offered, he can get work, I'm told, within 2 days. You can ask somebody, we'll get some job. But whatever the person is willing to do in a village, it's not possible for that person to get work because there are no jobs in the village. See, there's a difference here. However, there's one important difference. The village can give you shelter. Mumbai cannot give you shelter. There are people who are very well off, very well paid, who live in a slum in Bombay, unspeakable slum in Bombay. But in a village, the problem is not there. So, what do we do? This is the question. What do we do?
Well, in that regard, I have a statement, an observation. I think that India and China, for example, are in a different category. In India, we tried to, right from after independence, to develop the rural areas so that migration to the cities won't take place. Well, it took place anyways. Nobody could stop it. In China, they prepared their cities for massive migration. And so they said, we will develop the cities and the rural areas will take care of themselves. And I've been to China in the rural areas and in the city, and it's night and day. The cities are vastly superior to Indian cities. The rural areas of China are vastly inferior to Indian rural areas, even as poor as we are in India. If you go to the Chinese rural areas, you will find them to be poor.
You know, here
So there's a whole different philosophy.
I have a small problem here. You said India tried to develop
by rural electrification, roads.
Frankly speaking,
at least they tried.
it is all sham. I want to be very, very frank.
I agree.
Nothing
Are many roads being built to the villages?
Oh, there are plenty of programs.
Programs are there, nothing else.
Nothing has happened.
At least you try to show them in
It
5 years
doesn't
plans.
matter. I don't think Indian government has tried to develop the villages at all.
Right.
I'll tell you something. Like for example, in Eradicate,
No, I agree with you on that. I agree. I'm from a village and I went there recently. And the villagers are still using a small hook to get electricity for free from a telephone line, from a power line. There is no water, there is no sewage, there is no running. There is enough sewage.
he meant there was no
There is no sanitation.
Therefore,
Lying there, village expert.
now what is, at the Indian level, I'm not on the Swedish level, American level, whatever it is, what should a poor family have? You should have a dwelling with running water, sanitation, electricity. And any person, any adult there should be able to get training in employable, any employability thing. So you can get a job. It should have access to mass transport because the job may not be available in the same village. So you have to go to the next village. And this mass transport should also afford access to schools, hospitals and markets. Jobs, markets, hospitals, schools, unless you have access to all these things, you are still poor.
Why don't you tell them about that Gujarat, that woman being carried, no transport?
No, for example, in Gujarat, there are 36,000 villages. For all these villages, total number of gynecologists you have for looking after the women, but whatever it is, seven people. You can't do it. This is the problem of rural development we are talking about. It's not happening, sorry.
Yeah.
But
That was the
anyway,
intent.
I'd like to therefore think of a plan in which we can think of in the rural area providing all these amenities. Dwelling can provide. Water, sanitation, electricity, this is something that we have to add. Because the all the technology is available, we have to add these things. But what is more important to this? Mass transport. There is no transport available in villages at all. So we have to provide mass transport, and this mass transport should connect you to good quality secondary schools. I'm not talking of colleges at all. I'm talking secondary schools, secondary hospitals. I'm not talking cancer hospitals, heart diseases and so on. I mean, ordinary treatment.
Basic.
And of course markets and incidentally jobs. Now this is the scheme. Supposing you were to do it. Now here comes the question. Can you provide all these things in any single village? Can you have all these things, good schools, good hospitals, good market, jobs, etc. in a village of 1,500 people? That's the average population of a village in India. Then what do we do? What do we do? Any suggestions? What can we do?
Sure.
In the rural area, we have to provide all these things. How do you do it?
You form a group of villages and then
Correct. You require a cluster of villages. A cluster of villages. Simplest cluster is this: you have one village in the center, and there are 8 villages in the 8 directions. So 9 villages together, you can have something. And if you are a little more ambitious, you can have, say, about 30 villages together. And in which, if you want any of these facilities, you have to go to the next village perhaps. Or maybe you've got mass transport, you can go even farther away. So this, therefore, you have to change the concept of rural development from improving a village. Even more important, improving a village family, what IDCA does, to development of a cluster of villages. So this is the important hypothesis. That if you really want to have rural development, you develop a cluster of villages. At long last, the Government of India has accepted it, the Rural Development Ministry has accepted it. But unfortunately, as it happens in our country, Rural Development Ministry does not have the authority to do any of these things. It can't provide mass transport, it cannot provide schools, it cannot provide hospitals, it cannot provide markets. Therefore, it cannot be a problem.
What exactly do they do?
Oh. They build 10 foot wide doors.